Welcome, welcome, everybody.
Hey, everybody.
We are very excited today because we have a powerhouse dynamite interview from Northern Virginia today.
She's lighting up the room, literally.
She is lighting up the room. Tycely Williams, welcome to the show. We are so excited that you are here. And I want to give a little bit of background on Tycely, and I cannot read her entire bio because it is so stacked.
It's not a one-screen kind of thing.
No, but all of it is so amazing, and I'm just going to pick out nuggets because
so
the thing that I love most, I'm going to read this sentence. Tycely has inspired individuals and institutions to invest more than $92 million in charitable causes over her career. Okay, now what you did not hear that's on every other fundraiser's resume is I have raised $92 million. I love that you threw the credit over to inspiring other people because that really is at the heart of what we do. Bravo. She's worked at YWCA USA. She's worked as Chief Development Officer at American Red Cross. She has been all over the place. She is a cum laude graduate of Wake Forest. Shout out North Carolina. And I have to read this section because it brought me immense joy. But in her spare time, she chairs the Board of Trustees for Monument Academy Public Charter School, and she volunteers with numerous youth-serving organizations. Thank you so much. She is a joyful divorcee. She enjoys traveling, crashing charitable fundraising galas. There are people out there. You may not have known that Tycely has come in a formal gown into
She's like
your
the
hall.
secret shopper at the back.
She is, mystery shopper. And she loves taste testing fried green tomatoes and conversing with value-driven leaders in preparation for her first book. So is that enough to say grace over? Because we are diving into becoming radical change agents today and embracing this concept of being brave, not perfect, which Julie and I are just fangirling out all over. So I am going to stop talking and I'm going to pass it to Tycely. Tycely, thank you for being on our show. Can you give any more context or background to our listeners about your journey in nonprofit?
Well, y'all, I've got to start with an attitude of gratitude. You know, I'm from the deep South and Mama might be tuning in, so I got to make sure.
Hey, Mama.
Thank you. Hey, Mom. I'm showing good manners. So thank y'all so much, not only for having me, but for really just putting forth and being a source of good in a very literal and figurative sense. For those of us working in the social good space, powering philanthropy, we are surrounded by people who are trying to do good and be good. And your show enables us to do just that. So I just want to thank you for lending your talents to something that lifts up versus lending talents to something that pushes and presses us down. So thank you for that upward mobility.
Thank you so much.
Oh my gosh, we're not going to be able to get our heads through the
goodness.
door after this. I know.
Such an encourager.
So
Thank you.
Tycely, you are, I didn't say this, you are the Chief Development Officer for America's Promise Alliance. And I'm not familiar with that organization. I wonder if you could give us a little bit of background on it.
Absolutely. Becky would love to give you a little intro. We are a catalyst for positive change in America. We are an alliance of over 400 youth-serving organizations. So think about your Girl Scouts, your Boys and Girls Clubs, your YMCAs, places and spaces where young people gather, where young people are enriched, where they're empowered. We are a backbone organization providing supports so that those institutions are able to adequately serve young people. And we do that by creating an infrastructure for those youth-serving organizations and for organizations at large to hear directly from young people. I think, best practice is to not just do work without engaging input from those who are being impacted and affected, but to build solutions really built around the lived experiences and creating space and opportunity for those individuals to co-create and to be a part of the power structure that brings about positive change. And so we do that through research and convenings and other projects and initiatives in local communities across the US. So it is a fantastic mission that really connects caring adults to young people in America.
Love it. Former brownie here. And as somebody who loves Girl Scout cookies, keep on going with those good missions.
I was a Cub Scout until they said you had to camp out. And I was like, I'm out.
Not your jam.
Yeah, just not my jam. Well, Tycely, one of the topics we wanted to dive in with you is becoming radical change agents. So I wonder if you could just give some practical steps, advice for how we could advance our own causes and missions. We have people listening that represent all sorts of organizations. How can you be that radical change agent for wherever you're at, whatever's on your heart to serve?
Yeah, so I want to really just speak a little bit about recognizing that within every individual rests power. I think sometimes when we find ourselves operating within the realms of institutions and organizations, we become like so connected to what's on the org chart, right? I don't have power to do this, and I don't have authority, and I might not be the one responsible, but there is something called positional power that's often linked to where you sit on the org chart. And then there is a reality that no matter where you sit on an org chart, you have the ability to be an influencer. You have the ability to model really great behavior, to do so in a way that your peers are becoming faithful followers as a result of you not only saying what the right thing is to do, but actually putting your principles into practice and being able to demonstrate indeed what is the right thing to do. And so I just want to start in just a very simplistic space, and that is just determine who you're going to be. Give thought to your personal mission statement. Before you even commit to an organizational mission, before you give thought to your next opportunity on the career ladder, what is your personal mission? What are your personal values? What is your personal vision? And then if you're able to align your personal values, your personal mission, your personal vision as it pertains to the world in which we live, then it becomes so much easier for you as the decision maker to decide where you take your strengths, where you take your talents, and when it's time to possibly take your strengths and talents elsewhere, when and if you find yourself in institutions that are not aligning with your core principles.
Mic drop.
Boom. There was so much there.
So much there.
And I love this concept of just acknowledging positional power, because, to be very transparent, I mean, John and Julie know this about me, but I am somebody that does not like titles. I am somebody that does not like hierarchy, because I want everybody on the equal playing field, having an equal voice and and we know fundamentally that just cannot work in business. But I do really appreciate what you're saying here about aligning what is a personal brand almost. I mean, that's how it resonates with John and us, and who you are as an individual, how you dress, how you speak up, how you approach your business, whether you're a nonprofit or whether you're in the for-profit world. That says so much about who you are, your value system, how you manage relationships. And I wonder how you arrived at that kind of aha moment. And was there something in your career that allowed you to kind of see how people can kind of seize onto their power and use it for good?
Absolutely, Becky. So I'm sure it's similar to the experiences that you and John and Julie have had along the way. So, like many adults, there was a time when I was not an adult. And during that time, my parents, along with other adults, really shaped the way I viewed the world and really shaped the manner in which I now operate as an adult. And so I'll talk to you a little bit about how I was initially introduced to these principles, because I think that once you break it down, these are core simplistic principles that we have probably been exposed to at some point in our lives. And I really, as an adult, have just built upon those core principles. And so, for me, it begins with having two parents who are Black Americans who grew up in an era when America was segregated. And so my father's family is from Birmingham, Alabama. They came over to the state of Alabama from Louisiana and Mississippi. And my mom's side of the family, both her maternal and paternal family, they're from the state of South Carolina. So both of my ancestors, mother's side of the family, father's side of the family, they came to America through port cities, came as slaves. And that wasn't just a concept that was discussed during Black History Month in my household. It was something that was discussed every single day of my being.
Bravo.
And so, centered on that, my mother talked a lot about power and a lot about institutional versus individual power, because we came from people who literally did not have individual rights. These were individuals living within a country and living within a nation where they were being exposed to things like the Pledge of Allegiance, and they were being exposed to sentiments within the Constitution, but yet those things were not in reach for them. And you would think that you would live a pretty powerless life, taking into account you never felt as if you were empowered to do and to be all that was connected to the American dream. But my mother, in a masterful way, learned from her mother and from my grandmother's mother that regardless of your external situation and regardless of labels and titles and systems and structures, you are the most powerful being over your life. And it begins with your mindset. And if you have the right mindset, you can then give thought to how you use your mindset to change the environment around you. And that involves introducing a skill set. And so all of this to say, I have lived my entire life really focusing on two assets: what's in my mind and what am I able to do as far as my skills are concerned. And so with the mindset and the skill set frame, I kind of have stepped into life as a Black woman in America, trying to not only improve my individual situation and circumstances, but also working to right set systems and structures that have been impartially constructed and unfairly executed for centuries.
Wow.
You're incredible. So I would love for...
She is. And I just think her mom and grandmother, that's such an enlightened concept there, and the kindness and the love that you show when you say that. Really just challenges me to kind of look inside myself and see how we're making a space for everybody. How are we empowering people, even at the lowest possible level in our organizations and at our companies, to have a voice and have a seat at the table? That's a really powerful thought.
I love it. I love, diving into how mindsets can shift, habits, and habits can shape, you're reaching your goals and those sorts of things. I wonder if you could share what are some of the mindsets or mantras that have really been pinnacle for you as you've kind of stepped through your life that you continually remind yourself of?
Wow, there's so many. So in the great state of Alabama, there was an educator by the name of Marva Collins. She left Alabama and eventually went up to Chicago, and a phenomenal educator. And at a very young age, I guess probably between my junior and senior year of high school, I committed to memory wisdom that I just think I have carried with me every step of the way. And Marva Collins used to say, I will ignore the tags and names given me by society, since only I know what I have the ability to become. I will continue to let society predict, but only I can determine what I can and cannot be. And that has always been something that I have carried with me no matter where I go. Because here's the deal about names and titles. You don't have to be underrepresented in order for a name to be attached to you, right?
True.
I think Becky and Julie are like, yep. I remember middle school. I know all about the Mean Girls, right?
Yep.
You don't necessarily have to be a part of a traditionally marginalized community to know what it means to be ostracized, or know what it means to be to have stereotypes attached to who you are. And before you even have the ability to connect person to person, there's already a preconceived notion of who you are. And I think it's just so critically important for us to recognize that within each human being are multiple identities, right? Yes, I am a Black woman. Yes, I am a divorcee. Yes, I am an aspiring book author. Yes, you have all of these identities within you. And for whatever reason, we as human beings have qualified them. Is this a good identity? Is this a bad identity? Is this an identity I can be safe with? Is this an identity that I should be fearful of, right? And so you can see, as a result of what we attach to said identity, the belief begins to influence the behavior towards the individual. And in some instances, it leads to preference, right? In some instances, it leads to barriers and obstacles. And so I think as long as we are just mindful as it pertains to the way we socialize as human beings, and as long as we're mindful as it pertains to how we've been conditioned to socialize and how we've been incentivized, right? Because I think there within leads to the perpetuation of things that should change. And that's where I'm like, give it up for the young people in America that time and time again, I look to my parents and their generation, because my father was the one skipping school as a middle school student, running down to Kelly Ingram Park in Birmingham, Alabama to march, because he and his peers were like, this is not the way the world should be. Right. And so young people, I think in so many times throughout our history, have activated an element of courage that is to be commended, and an element of courage that we as caring adults should model.
There's so much I want to say right there. One, your dad is my spirit animal, so good on you, Dad, for I would forgive my children for rolling school for something like that. But I also want to just even humanize something that happened before you even got on the call. As we were reviewing your bio, and we go over that joyful divorcee, and it's like, this is exactly what you're talking about with labels and where you can go, and it's like, oh, can we say, we said, should we talk about that? And I'm thinking, yeah, let's talk about it. It's in the bio. It's clearly something that defines her as a joyful and giving person. Like, let's talk about that. And I just love how you just shifted the lens just a little bit and let us see you. That was such a brilliant move, I think, on your part to this point that you're just making right here.
Well, Becky, I'm so glad that you referenced that. I was very intentional about centering that identity. And I was intentional about centering the identity because growing up in the Deep South, I was born in 1975. There were certain things that were deemed appropriate and acceptable, and there were certain things that were deemed inappropriate and unacceptable. And divorce was a cardinal sin in the Deep South. And it was almost as if you were to get a divorce, that you might as well just take that scarlet letter, put it right on over that monogram, and just walk around town as someone who was less than. And I have always thanked my parents for instilling within me courage and for reinforcing and incentivizing me to be courageous. And so, like many individuals, I was super, super excited about my wedding, about my marriage, and hopeful that it would be a happily ever after. And it ended up having an expiration date. And I am no longer married. And the reason, Becky, I've got to shed insight on this. There are two reasons why I center that within my bio. Shortly after, I would probably say shortly after my 40th birthday, I don't know about you all, but like birthdays that end in 5 and 0, I'm always like introspective, like, let me conduct a focus group on Tycely Williams.
I get it. I turned 40 last year. I am in that space still. Yes.
25 is hitting me hard.
So y'all, I reached out to somebody who knows more about Google Analytics than I do. And I said, hey, I'm just curious, like, I'm interested in seeing what comes up or what's the most popular Google search with Tycely Williams. And this was a gentleman helping me with this exercise, a consultant that I hired. And he called me and he said, so, I've gotten to know you, and this is probably going to be really, really a little unnerving for you, but people are really interested in who your husband is. And I thought, I don't have a husband. Haven't had a husband for quite some time. So I got to give the people what they want. Guess what, folks? I am not married. I don't have a husband. I am a divorcee. And going back to the qualification, because, people are going to do this, I am a joyful divorcee. So, Becky, that's, part of what led me there. Just to get out ahead of people, saving some time. You don't have to look up to see who my husband is and what he does. And
I am loving that story and the authenticity and again, back to your own brand. I mean, if that's something that people are associating with you, you just turned it completely on its head and you made it your own. And I completely love it. And I want to keep going with this just whole notion of bravery and boldness that you are talking about, because I think it's such a great topic, especially for nonprofits and really just for any human being as we're trying to navigate this very strange world of COVID that we're living in. It's like we are all living in this brave new world, and we have got to put ourselves out on a ledge to just survive and thrive in this very strange world. So talk about this concept of being brave and not perfect. I mean, how have you leveraged bravery in your development career? I mean, as a major gift officer, some of that seems obvious to me, but I think some may not be. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Wow. I will say that as an ambassador for any mission in America, you step into your day knowing that you are going to receive and hear no.
Yep.
If you're in the South, it might be a little bit sweeter. It may be, darling, sure do appreciate the opportunity, but no, thank you. Regardless, you are going to hear no. And when you're in a profession and it seems as if the manner in which we go about through this calculated strategy that's attached to frontline fundraising, you have to increase what's in your pipeline, let's just say by 3 times of what you're hoping to bring in. So if I've got to bring in $1 million, I got to get $3 million of ask out there. And that means I'm counting on the fact that $2 million are going to be a rejection, right?
Right.
And so knowing that, you have to prepare yourself for what you know will ultimately come, right? You are going to receive a no thank you. So I will say what is so incredibly important, and especially in the midst of where we are at this particular moment in time with so much uncertainty connected to this pandemic, is you have to step into the situation with an awareness and continue in spite of the fact that you are going, so not even that you're likely, but there's clarity there. You're going to receive a no. It is so critically important that you do not internalize that you don't process it as rejection, because eventually you'll find yourself in states of depression. You'll find yourself doubting your own capabilities, doubting the merit of your mission, when there could be a multitude of reasons connected to why you received the no thank you. And it may not have anything to do with the validity, with the merit, with the worth, with the promise and the potential of what it is you are inviting people to invest in. And so courage is so critically important, because without the activation of courage, you will begin to stand still. You will begin to say, I need to make a few calls, but don't really feel like being rejected today. So I think I'll just work on strategy, right? You will begin to step away from a feeling unless you recognize that that particular feeling, that particular exchange, that particular probability is a part of the process. You are unable to reach the opportunity to celebrate without going through the probability of your pipeline, without forging relationships. And I'm also so committed to this concept of courage. You referenced Wake Forest. I love Wake and I always will. As a young person, I went to debate tournaments at Wake Forest as a high school student, and that was my first introduction to the campus. And I went to high school at a time there was not an internet. It's hard to believe, but I found out about Wake Forest by literally stepping foot onto the campus and receiving old school mail with like this slick,
that's awesome,
direct mail piece that painted this like utopia, and nestled within the brochure was Dr. Maya Angelou, who taught at Wake. And I said, she's the reason I want to go to Wake Forest. And the people were kind and the campus was great, but Dr. Angelou is what led me to pursue being a student at Wake Forest University. And for the 2 years where I studied under Dr. Angelou, there were
Oh my
two
gosh.
things. Oh, girl, you want to talk about a blessing.
Yeah.
I just got
You're gonna have to give us a story.
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
I love her. I mean, talk about someone who is the embodiment of American bravery. I mean, her writing is at another level for me. So I'm sorry, keep going. But I had to pick my jaw up and refasten it. Keep going.
No, you're fine. So Dr. Angelou talks about two things consistently over and over again, and no matter what you're studying, or what the literature is. And the first thing is joy. And the reference to the joyful divorcee is also a nod to my teacher. Because Dr. Angelou would always say, and she was very insistent on calling people by their surname. So I was Miss Williams. So she would always say, Miss Williams, it is critically important for you to be joyful. You must protect and preserve your joy. Without joy, you have nothing in life, right? And so there was this reinforcement of the need to be joyous, to be joyful. And Dr. Angelou was so brilliant on many fronts, but she would never leave you thinking how to be and become. She would always present a pathway for obtainment. And as it pertained to joy, the pathway for obtainment was always the activation of courage. And she would say, no matter what decision is before you, if you are leaning in a direction that you think will leave you being and feeling joyful, it will require you to activate courage. And I've taken that with me everywhere I go, and I push and I challenge myself. And as a frontline fundraiser, going back to the question that we were just talking about, do you have the courage to find your $1 million moment, right? Do you have the courage to push through, right, to the answer to the problem that you're trying to solve? And so courage is just so incredibly important, not only for me as an individual, but for institutions and organizations. And it's not only important as a virtue, but it is an important practice that we must turn into and recognize that it's a verb. It's not a noun. We must actually attach action to being courageous.
Okay. Hit rewind and re-listen to that.
Yeah. I mean, Tycely, I want to call you up in 3 days when I've been able to process what you have just said about, well, what I will now call Dr. Angelou, and stop calling her Maya Angelou every time I talk about her. Because I still remember being in high school and reading Where the Caged Bird Sings and just thinking, this woman is so in tune with humanity, and she is so forgiving and brave, and what you just said about a pathway starting at joy. And if you can start there, like, courage will naturally just flow from that. And what a mind-bending concept that is to wrap our minds around. Again, I'm gonna have to call you in 3 days when I can like make heads and tails of all of that in my mind. That was so powerful.
But what a groundwork, for working in philanthropy too, because I think philanthropy is a conduit for joy too, for people to express that, to experience that on the receiving end and on the giving end. Okay, Tycely, I don't know how we're going to ask you to do this.
I don't know either.
We need your one good thing. Okay, we ask all of our guests the one good thing, something you can
Wow.
take today, your secret to success or a good habit, piece of advice. What is it?
My one thing is to never leave home without your smile. I think it is the most important accessory that perfectly accents and accentuates whatever you've decided to rock that day, right? So you can find a feeling that brings joy, and you can literally find satisfaction as it pertains to simply having a positive outlook and a pleasant disposition.
So 98% of our listenership is going to be listening on a podcast platform. But if you were able to go onto YouTube and watch this interview, you will see that Tycely has been smiling throughout every part of this interview. So my point is, you are literally, again, on brand with who you are by virtue of just being a smiling, wholesome, happy person. So,
And her smile is famous, can I just say? Because
oh my gosh,
I
tell
told
this
Tycely,
story.
you know, when we got connected to Tycely, I told Julie, I said, I know her because,
How?
you know, a couple of years ago when Becky and I went through the CFRE certification process. So
That's you might explain what that is for our non-nonprofit
Sure, it's the
listeners.
certification
Certified
of
fundraising
executive.
It's
Yes,
like
which
the
is a great
CPA,
process.
getting your CPA for a
Yeah, it's kind of like the
fundraiser.
CPA of
So,
fundraising. But Tycely was like the cover model
Poster
of
child.
CFRE. Yeah.
For
So I know, you
years.
have to keep logging on and uploading your credits and all these things. And then I got audited, which was lovely. Got to go in and work through all the credits. But every time I go, I got greeted by Tycely's smile. So I feel like your smile
it's been a
really has
constant
been
with us
everywhere.
for years
It
before
has
we
been.
ever knew you. So, Tycely, tell us how people can connect with you. Where are you on social media? How could they connect with America's Promise Alliance? Do you have any social handles? Anything?
Absolutely. So we would welcome all of your listeners to join America's Promise Alliance at no cost. And they can do that by simply visiting americaspromise.org. And that is America with an S, americaspromise.org. The same handle on social media. And then you can connect with me more frequently on Twitter. And it's just at TYCELY. You can also find me on LinkedIn and from time to time, a few godmother giggles and auntie adventures on Instagram.
Yay.
Same handle at Tycely.
Got it.
How awesome that you get to have the handle of just your first
Yeah,
name. Like
power
that's
move.
like a power move.
I would
That's
love
a
to be the
brand in
only
and of
Julie.
itself. No kidding.
It's been a delight, and I literally can't wait to rewind and listen to all the wisdom you dropped
Yes.
today. Thank you,
Thank you,
Tycely.
Tycely.
Thank y'all for having me.